Is your daily menu a bit of a blur, full of processed meals and those quick energy fixes that never really last? It makes you wonder, doesn't it? What if the real secrets to feeling good and staying healthy aren't in some new diet craze, but in habits from over 2,000 years ago? Could the simple, whole foods people ate in ancient Galilee actually be what we're looking for in our busy modern lives? Welcome. Today we're taking a fascinating trip back, way back to first century Palestine. But we're not just looking at history, we're exploring the kind of food Jesus likely ate. What was on the table back then? And more to the point, could adopting some of those ancient eating habits genuinely make a difference to our health today in the 21st century? We'll look at what those meals were really like and then check out the surprising modern science that actually supports their benefits. Let's see if a 2,000-year-old way of eating can change how we think about our food and well-being. So to get a picture of what Jesus ate, we need to imagine life in first century Galilee. It was an agricultural world. What people ate depended heavily on the seasons, the land around them, what they could grow, and their religious traditions. Forget our modern supermarkets with everything available all year round. They ate what was local, what was in season, and what they could get. Bread was absolutely central to their diet, but this wasn't the fluffy, white stuff many of us eat today. It was usually whole grain bread, often from barley or wheat, with very little processing. It kept the whole grain intact, making it really nourishing. Bread was so basic that the Hebrew phrase for to eat bread basically meant to have a meal. It was treated with respect, always broken by hand, never cut with a knife. Fruits and vegetables were everywhere, changing with the seasons. Picture tables with fresh figs, juicy grapes, sweet dates, and bright red pomegranates. Melons, cucumbers, and different kinds of greens would have been pretty common too. These weren't just for vitamins. Many, like figs and grapes, also had cultural and religious meaning. And you can bet onions and garlic were used both for flavor and for their health perks. Legumes like lentils and beans were a big deal. Meat wasn't an everyday thing for most folks, so these plants were vital for protein and fiber. They often ended up in hearty stews, usually eaten with that essential bread. Olive oil was their main source of fat. They used it for cooking, as a dressing, and even in lamps or for anointing. Olives themselves, picked from the trees that grew all over the landscape, were a regular part of their meals too. Since Jesus lived near the Sea of Galilee, fish naturally played a big role in their diet. The Gospels themselves tell plenty of stories about fish and fishermen. It was a key source of protein and healthy fats. Often fish was salted to make it last longer, as they didn't have refrigerators back then. Dairy usually came from goats and sheep, things like milk and simple cheeses. They also ate something like yogurt, sometimes sweetened with a bit of honey. Honey itself was one of the few sweeteners around and was highly prized, a symbol of good things in the land of milk and honey. And what did they drink? Wine was pretty common, usually enjoyed in moderation with meals. In many cases, it was actually safer to drink than the water. It also had an important place in religious practices and social get-together. But of course, water was still the most common drink. It's also really important to remember that as a Jewish man, Jesus would have followed kosher dietary laws. This meant not eating certain foods like pork and shellfish, and these rules definitely shaped their everyday food choices. Meals weren't just about filling up. They were deeply social. The New Testament often shows Jesus eating with others, from simple meals with his disciples to big wedding feasts. Eating together strengthened community ties and was a core part of how they lived. Sharing food was an act of friendship and hospitality. Plus, daily life involved a lot of physical activity, like walking, which was how most people got around. Now, when we look closely at this historical diet, something really interesting pops out. It sounds a lot like a way of eating that's celebrated today for its amazing health benefits, the Mediterranean diet. And this isn't a diet like a strict short-term plan, but more of a lifestyle inspired by the traditional foods of countries around the Mediterranean Sea. Places like Greece, Italy, Spain, and, significantly, the Levant region where Jesus lived. Think about the main ideas of the Mediterranean diet. It's packed with plant-based foods, Fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, and nuts. Olive oil is the star when it comes to fats. The diet includes a moderate amount of fish and poultry, but not a lot of red meat. Wine is often part of it, usually in moderation and with meals. And for dessert, fresh fruit is the usual go-to, with sugary sweets saved for special occasions. The resemblance is pretty clear, isn't it? The diet of Jesus and the people of his time, relying on whole grains, lots of local produce, legumes, fish, and olive oil, was basically an early version of what we now call the Mediterranean style of eating. They weren't following some scientifically designed plan. They were just eating what the land gave them, shaped by their traditions and what was necessary. But in doing that, they naturally ate a diet that modern science would much later confirm is incredibly healthy. This ancient way of eating, full of whole, unprocessed foods, is a real contrast to many modern Western diets that are often loaded with processed stuff, unhealthy fats, and way too much sugar. It's fascinating how well they line up historically, but what does today's science have to say? Well, the health benefits linked to the Mediterranean diet, which, as we've seen, is very similar to what Jesus likely ate, are huge and very well researched. First off, let's talk heart health. Countless studies show that following a Mediterranean-style diet significantly cuts down the risk of heart disease and stroke. The healthy fats from olive oil, omega-3s from fish, and all the antioxidants and fiber from fruits, veggies, and whole grains work together to help lower blood pressure, improve cholesterol, and keep arteries healthy. Then there's cancer risk. Eating lots of antioxidant-rich foods like colorful fruits and vegetables, plus beneficial compounds found in olive oil and legumes, helps fight off oxidative stress and cell damage. This way of eating is linked to a lower risk of certain types of cancer. Cognitive function gets a real boost too. Research connects the Mediterranean diet to better brain health, a slower decline in thinking skills as we age, and a reduced risk of conditions like Alzheimer's disease and dementia. It seems the anti-inflammatory effects of the diet play a big part in protecting our brains. Weight management is another plus. Unlike those restrictive fad diets, the Mediterranean approach is about balanced, satisfying meals that are rich in fiber. Fiber helps you feel full and can stop you from overeating. Studies show it's effective for keeping weight in a healthy range long-term and making obesity less likely. If diabetes is a concern, this way of eating can be protective. It's associated with a lower risk of developing type 2 diabetes. And for those who already have it, it can help manage blood sugar levels better. The focus on whole, unprocessed foods and healthy fats helps with insulin sensitivity. And we can't forget gut health. All that fiber from plant foods and possibly fermented foods like yogurt or certain pickled vegetables, which were common in traditional diets, helps create a healthy and diverse community of microbes in your gut. A healthy gut is so important for overall health, affecting everything from how you digest food and absorb nutrients to how well your immune system works. Beyond these specific things, this dietary pattern is known for its anti-inflammatory effects, which can help with a whole range of chronic conditions. It's really a holistic way to eat that supports overall well-being and vital. It's pretty amazing, right? A diet from thousands of years ago matches up so well with what nutritional science tells us today. Before we get into how you can actually use these ancient ideas in your own kitchen, if you're finding this trip through history and health as interesting as I do, please give this video a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe and the little notification bell so you don't miss out on more explorations of ancient wisdom for our modern lives. So back to our big question. Does eating like Jesus hold the key to a healthier you? The evidence, both from history and from science, really does point to yes. The dietary patterns of first-century Palestine, which are so much like the highly praised Mediterranean diet, offer some serious health advantages. From better heart health and a lower cancer risk to sharper thinking, sustainable weight management, and improved metabolic health. The benefits are pretty convincing. While we can't eat the exact same meals they did 2,000 years ago, the main ideas, focusing on whole, unprocessed plant foods, healthy fats like olive oil, fish, legumes, and eating mindfully with others, are timeless and incredibly helpful for the challenges we face today. This approach to eating isn't about strict rules, but about finding a more balanced relationship with food, with our bodies, and maybe even a deeper connection to history and tradition.